Okay, well, welcome back. We'd be remiss if we didn't offer at least some story from Barksdale's charge. And as we've been trying to do throughout the past 2 days, rather than talking about the action at the broad level, a lot of which is already known, we've been trying to kind of drill down deeper and talk about individualized stories. And in this case, I want to extract the narrative of Ruffin Thompson. Thompson is a soldier in the 17th Mississippi who's going to charge over the fields before us, the grounds that we just saw a bit earlier today. So again, just to reorient us one more time, we're along Seminary Ridge, and off in my distance, the site that's most important for our narrative is the Gettysburfg farm, and just beyond that, of course, lies the Gettysburg Road. Now, William Barksdale had been an ardent secessionist. He had been born in Tennessee, moved to Mississippi to study law. He considers that eventually his home state. He serves in Mexico, and then he also serves in the House of Representatives. And on July the 2nd, Barksdale is going to be extraordinarily anxious to charge that Union line, which, as John said, is now positioned along the Gettysburg Road. Now, this particular area is of critical importance because of its elevation. And though it's been actively debated by scholars, and it's not something that I want to get into today, Dan Sickles does choose to move about 600 yards beyond his assigned position, probably because he was nervous about the elevation that was to his fore. He had, probably in the back of his mind, memories of Chancellorsville and the effectiveness of Confederate artillery on high ground that he withdrew from. And so it's going to be the job of Barksdale's brigade to attack that high ground, to take that position, and it's going to ideally form a perfect plateau for artillery fire and then to launch the subsequent attacks down the line. Now, Ruffin Thompson, by this point in time, is a seasoned soldier. He is a veteran of Fredericksburg, a veteran of the peninsula, and as is quite common, his family is extraordinarily nervous. And so again, I would urge us not to think only about the soldiers on the battlefields on July the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Think about the home folks. And ironically, on July the 2nd, his father, William H. Thompson, is going to write, he knows about the advance across the Potomac, he knows about Lee's invasion, and he says that these are events that are looked upon with intense anxiety. And he also charges they must bring about results of the most important character to our cause. They are the deepest interest to those, and this is the key, whose sons are on that march. My dear son, you are passing through one of the severest ordeals that the world has ever known. And indeed, on that very day, Thompson's young life was in great peril. Thompson is going to join that large charge across these very fields, and his family is then going to be riddled with anxiety, waiting with anticipation for some word from their son. They're hearing in the newspapers fragments of the events at Gettysburg. They're reading about it. They're extraordinarily concerned. And in fact, his father is going to write as late as the 25th of August, I know you've gone to Pennsylvania, but what exactly has happened? How rejoiced we would be if we could hear from you. Write me, or have someone write to me. Telegraph me, anything as soon as possible. What's the fate of their young man, their young son? What happened on these fields? Finally, the letter comes. We went to Pennsylvania, and we expect to go there again this fall. This gives voice to the argument that historian Gary Gallagher has offered so well in the Confederate War, that perhaps Gettysburg wasn't the major Confederate turnback or defeat that it has often been assigned, but instead it was kind of a minor setback. So Thompson's even optimistic in the fall of 1863, saying, perhaps we're going back into Pennsylvania. He goes on, I was bruised at Gettysburg in the left shoulder, but it did not stop me from doing my duty. Again, kind of projecting this manly facade to his family. As to my wound, it was true I was struck on the shoulder, but it was only a bruise, painful for a day or two, nothing more. The skin was barely broke. He then gets into the action itself, talks about the Mississippians going across the Gettysburfg farm, and he says that when we first hit the Yankee line, it was filled with Pennsylvania Zouaves. These, of course, were the men of the 114th Pennsylvania. Through a perfect hailstorm, grape, canister, shell, and minis, I fell in the grass when I was struck, and on examination, I found that I was unable to use my shoulder joints and concluded to go out. I had not fired a single shot, but those around me had fired one or two as that Union line begins to break. So Ruffin Thompson is going to survive this charge miraculously with nothing but a flesh wound. But I think what I really want to highlight in this segment is the anxiety and anticipation of the people on the home front. Again, they're hearing little bits of information throughout late June of this grand invasion of Lee's army into the north. They begin to get extraordinarily concerned about the fates of their loved ones, and then for them, it's simply a matter of time. They must wait until they hear something either through newspapers, through men on furlough, or through those desperately wanted letters home. And for this particular family, the Thompsons, that letter home doesn't come basically until almost the end of summer 1863. I imagine they probably had heard through the grapevine that their son had come out relatively unscathed, but it's a matter of weeks and then almost months of anticipation before they finally hear from their beloved son. So again, I would encourage audiences when they come to these fields to think in a more expansive manner, not only about what's unfolding on these battlefields, but what's happening, in this case, at the home front in the state of Mississippi. So thank you very much for tuning in for this segment. We're going to now go on to the area of the base at Little Round Top, and there we're going to pick up our conversation again with Dana Schoaf.